Hey there, lovely people. Welcome back to another Writing Tip Tuesday. I'm Sammi, and I'm a writer who likes to help other writers become better writers. If you continue on to enjoy this video, please leave a like. It'll really help me out. This week, I want to talk to you about unexpected channels on YouTube that I think can help you grow as a writer. And the key thing I want to focus on here is that they're unexpected. Like, none of these are places that people who want to write books would normally gravitate to. But I think that they can be super helpful, and they have helped me grow as a writer, and based on that, can probably help you grow as a writer. I've broken them down into a couple of categories. So the first category is character development. So making your characters really believable and understanding where their psychology is coming from and how to properly portray certain aspects of what makes a person a person. So the first channel I want to talk about is Cinema Therapy, which blew up in the YouTube world a while ago. So there's probably a chance that you already know about this, but you probably haven't thought about it in terms of writing your story. Cinema Therapy is a channel that is run by a therapist and a filmmaker, and they watch movies and talk about how the psychology affects the characters in the story, how the storytelling influences how the camera moves, and what that influences the characters to feel, and what the viewers feel in response. So it's a really great source for knowing how to really get into the minds of characters and seeing what makes certain characters effective and others not as effective. You can learn a lot about writing believably and with the right motivation, the right thing to drive your characters through their story, and why some tropes work and others don't, and like what causes the difference, and how you can maximize on the tropes that do work in terms of storytelling and believability. Another channel that I think is a good resource for character development would be Psych2Go. It's a similar way of doing research into characters that you're developing as would be watching Cinema Therapy, but instead of doing the reverse where it's psychology about a character that's already been made, and then you take that information and develop your own characters. This is just like regular straight psychology, and it's easily consumed. They're like usually around 5 minutes per video. So if you're like, oh, I think I want my character to have OCD, they've got like a whole playlist of things that have to do with OCD or ADHD or anxiety, and things that you can put into play in your story by doing more research that can help influence your characters and their developments rather than guessing or going off of just personal experience, which is never something that I would advise, because that just ends up turning into a self-insert. And if all your characters are self-inserts, that's gonna be a very boring story. Just getting a bare minimum understanding of different parts of psychology and then learning what you need to look more into. It's a very great source for that. And it's done with adorable little drawings, which is like so much easier to consume. At least for me. I like cartoons. My second category is channels that can help you gain inspiration if you're trying to find something to spark a story and you're not really finding like the right thing, but something that can spark a little bit of curiosity and help flare up that creative spark in you. So the first one I have is the History Channel's YouTube channel. I know. But the History Channel's YouTube channel is actually way more interesting. For me, I don't like history, but it's not like ancient aliens and like all of that kind of like crazy stuff that the History Channel became known for. Some of it is just like really interesting. Like there are different types of shows and different people who do shows, different like internet personalities who have like a regular pop up on the History Channel, and then they have like there's certain specific interests that they go through and explore and look into detail with the History Channel's resources. Some of the information can like inspire historical fictions, or if you're writing in like a fantasy world, it can help you do some world building because you'll learn something about a past society that may mimic the society that you want in your fantasy story. So it's got a lot of potential because a lot of things from the past just sort of end up in fantasy worlds, and things that are maybe in sci-fi that are more like intuitive based on things that have happened in the past. I have been particularly fond of Ancient Eats with Sola, which like you don't often think about why your characters eat what they eat. But like if you think about it, if you are in any way inspired to think about it, like watching a video about how ninjas ate power balls and like they were hopped up on LSD. These things can be super, super interesting, and they can inspire a different thought process that you may not have thought about originally when developing your story. Like, maybe one of your characters is really convinced that their snack food is straight up giving them superpowers, but really they're just eating rye fungus, which is LSD. But like, I never would have thought of anything along those lines if I hadn't been exploring the History Channel's YouTube channel. So, something to consider. Another channel that I think would be a good resource for developing ideas in a more modern sense is Answer in Progress. They make really interesting, well-researched video essays on things like that are going on in regular, real, everyday life. And it's like, it could be relatable things. It could be things that you don't really interact with. So being able to base some knowledge on it. Similar to Psych2Go, you have that resource where they're putting in most of the effort up front and you're benefiting from it. But if it's an experience that you haven't had personally, it can be a really great resource to look into certain things that are going on in the world. Like they put up a video about why you don't read anymore, why you stopped reading. Obviously, I read, so it's really interesting to get another perspective, and it can be super inspiring to give your like antagonist a perspective or the love interest a perspective that's different than your own and therefore different than what likely would be portrayed in your protagonist. My third category is resources for developing your writer life, like who you are outside of what's on the page, outside of your creative mind, outside of that, how you manage your life and like achieve your goals and stuff like that. And one amazing resource that I honestly forget about until I need her is Mariana's Corner, which is this like planning, productivity, study, bullet journal, note-taking, all of this really great resources for students, for one, really great for students. Two, when you're in a project that has a lot of research that needs to be done and you don't really know how to start or where to go, she has so many resources on like self-learning, how to set goals for developing your own knowledge on certain topics, how to take better notes, all of these things that are very, very beneficial when you are in that researching phase, especially if you're like me and you never really learned how to study and you're teaching yourself now as an adult who's out of all school. All of her content is absolutely beautiful, for one. It's absolutely gorgeous. Her handwriting is gorgeous. Her filming is gorgeous. It's just very aesthetic. And I have the utmost respect for it. And it's also super helpful. So when you're looking into setting goals for yourself and how to achieve them a little bit more specifically and how to find a planning system that works for you, all of that kind of stuff, her content has been really helpful for me. So I assume it would be helpful for you as well. I have one more that is in the writing lifestyle category, but I feel like it's kind of cheating because it's also in the writing world. If you're here at this channel, I assume you've probably heard of Abbie Emmons, who wrote 100 Days of Sunlight, and she also wrote Tessa and Weston, The Best Christmas Ever. She's a pretty popular YouTuber in the writing world, and her channel is very, very helpful, but that's not what I'm here to talk about because I assume that you've probably heard of her. And if you haven't, now you have. She's great. Genuine person. So like how she talks to us as viewers is just like, we're pals and it's really nice. But her and her sister, who is also an author, have a podcast where they sort of talk about anything and everything that they want to talk about. A lot of it has to do with having a writer's lifestyle and different questions that you have on certain writing things. And then they do like story breakdowns where they put in clips of of the movie version of the stories that they're talking about, and like all of these really, really great long form content where they're just sort of talking. I have been distinctly motivated by certain episodes of their podcast, but their podcast is on Kate's channel, which is Emmons, and I find their podcast to be really, really inspiring. And even though it is still in the writing world, I think it is highly beneficial. So that's all I've got for you today for unexpected resources for writers here on YouTube. I will try and find more over time, but this is where I'm going to stop for the time being. If you have any resources that have been super helpful for you as a writer, drop them down in the comments. I would love to hear it and check them out because I'm sure other people will find them just as helpful as you did. If you subscribe to any of those channels, let me know in the comments. I'm curious to see how many of you are also like looking at these channels and podcast the way that I am and seeing the benefits that they have for writers. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like. If you don't want to miss any of my uploads, please hit that subscribe button and the notification bell next to it. I post a new video every Tuesday and Saturday, so I will see you guys back here for a story study Saturday.